So it's our pleasure to introduce Kenn Turner, the President and CEO of the Mass Life Sciences Center, here to the Museum of Science for 3 questions.
First off, thanks for inviting me to visit the museum and visit such an incredible institution.
You know, the world sees Cambridge and Boston as the hottest biosciences center in the world, but the truth is it extends beyond just Boston and Cambridge, and the Life Sciences Center's work extends Commonwealth-wide. So what else is happening around the Commonwealth?
Thank you for that question, because that's one that's really resonates with me. I've only been in my position now about 5 or 6 months, so I still think of myself as relatively new. But part of the strategy of the center, beyond just simply investing in the ecosystem and serving as the hub and being a convener, establishing our leadership and growing companies and bringing companies to Massachusetts and finding additional funding for the ecosystem, all of those things, you know, are important aspects of our role at the center. But I do believe that we need to have a strategy around what I'm calling regionalization, which is when I look at the greater Boston-Cambridge area, the life sciences have simply exploded. I mean, just unbelievably exploded. Just a few weeks ago, for example, in the BBJ, there was a piece that talked about the fact that in the Commonwealth, we now have over $7 billion of venture capital amassed. Ready to go in the pipeline, ready to pull the trigger. I mean, that shows you just how robust our ecosystem is. But it is centered, and it's just centered primarily in the core, the heartbeat of Boston and Cambridge. I believe that when we look at our gateway cities, when we look at Central Mass, when we look at even Western Mass, that there's an opportunity to spread the wealth as I'm thinking about it. So you look at Lowell, you look at Lawrence, you look at Worcester, or Springfield, or even Pittsfield, MBI, which is our incubator in Worcester, M2D2, which is our incubator in Lowell. We've got BIC, which is the Berkshire Innovation Center in Pittsfield. You know, these are the, as I think about it, are the landing zones that will ultimately explode the life sciences across the Commonwealth and spread the opportunity more evenly. And so that's one of the things I really want to focus on while I'm at the center.
When you look at other places in the country like Silicon Valley that has had an explosion, but also with that explosion of wealth has become an explosion of the opportunity gap. And the winners, so to speak, in the tech industry, a lot of people are being left out. And I know diversity and inclusion is something near and dear to your heart. What are some of your thoughts about why that kind of thing happens when there's an explosion, and what are your thoughts about what we can do about it so that there is greater diversity and inclusion in this massive explosion of the life sciences industry?
When I look at the sciences, and granted, again, you know, being early in my role, you know, I try to be careful not to be too prescriptive in my thinking, because we are going through a strategy process right now with a consulting firm that I want to kind of help me think about where we should take the center next. But I do believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion has to be a part of everything that we do. I think that you have to capture kids early on. You know, my thinking right now is at a minimum, it has to be middle school and maybe even elementary school. If you've never met an astronaut, how do you know you want to be an astronaut? If you've never met an architect, how do you know that that's a career you can pursue? I think the life sciences are the same way. I think we have this image of life sciences by and large as a bunch of, you know, eggheads and wonks running around in lab coats with masks on, you know, trying to figure out like the next, you know, cell gene therapy breakthrough or whatever. But for a kid that's growing up in Monroe, Louisiana, where I came from and went to the schools that I went to, that isn't even in your imagination. You don't know anybody who has a job like that. Your mom and dad most certainly don't have a job like that. Nobody in your neighborhood has a job like that. And so we've got to expose kids early on to the potential career paths. We've got to get them excited about science and engineering and math. And then we bring them along, right? So you bring them along through junior high and to high school with our apprentice program, our internship program. We support them through college, and then ultimately into the sciences.
And then back to what Mass Life Sciences Center is doing for the Museum of Science. You're helping support this great exhibit called Project Vaccine. How does supporting Project Vaccine fit into the strategy you just described?
It's vital, Tim. It's vital. Look, you know, the past year and a half has been, you know, incredibly stressful and trying on all of us, you know, no matter who you are, no matter where you live on the planet. But the one thing I think it's done, you know, when we look to the bright side of coming out of COVID, and in my mind anyway, is that it's driven home to every man, woman, and child on the planet the importance of life sciences. We now know about our DNA. We now know about Moderna. It's a household name, right? Whereas before, when the Science Center invested in Moderna a decade ago, no one even knew what RNA was, right? Our DNA was. But now people get the importance of vaccines and the importance of science. And so I think it's a critical moment for us to, at the risk of sounding a bit cliche-ish, leverage the crisis, right? Let's take some good out of this. Let's now drive home the fact that science is important, that facts are important, right? That facts are important. And so what troubles me greatly, personally, as a person of color, is that I get up every day, I read the New York Times. So that's the first thing I do, it's just a habit. And I look at that little bar that they have that shows the number of people in America who are vaccinated versus the number of people who are fully vaccinated. I think the last time when I looked yesterday, because I didn't this morning because of our taping, I think it was about 54% were, had a single shot and about 46% were fully vaccinated. Well, let's go down south where I'm from, right? Let's look at Florida, or Mississippi, or Alabama, or Arkansas. It's 43%. It's 70% here in the Commonwealth, thanks to the leadership of Governor Baker, right, and the Polito administration, and where facts and science counts. But that's why this exhibit is important. We need to drive home the fact that vaccines and science are important and that we can save lives. That's what ultimately life sciences, to me, is all about. It's about saving lives.
That's the end of our formal questions. I want to just pick up on the last thing, though, because a lot of times people do think of the sciences as something that the professionals do. Right. But the fact is that science is public and participatory, whether you know it or not. And everything for the vaccine, for the coronavirus, has forced the public participation in science. That's correct. The public participation in science is what this has brought about. And I think what you're describing is in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, with 70% of the people vaccinated, it shows that our Commonwealth actually has a love for science. And so the prospect of creating jobs in life sciences in manufacturing in this Commonwealth is actually pretty strong because people are predisposed to actually trust the science. And so the vision of broad-based participation of employment in life sciences beyond just the lab in Kendall Square is a beautiful vision. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about what your vision might be for people being employed throughout the Commonwealth in life sciences specifically, but also in sciences in general.
I think we have a real opportunity in the Commonwealth in the next decade to focus on driving biomanufacturing in this state. I want to beat Pennsylvania. I want to beat North Carolina and Virginia and Maryland and Texas. I want to beat them at this game. And here's where I think we've got the advantage. Our R&D sector of life sciences is so compelling. It is so compelling that every major player on the planet is in the Commonwealth. Because of our incubators, because of our early stage companies, these companies recognize that they have to be here, but they don't necessarily do the manufacturing here. And that's because of a lot of things that we can talk about, which are the issues around that. But my point is, if we're able to drive that sector of the science, of the life sciences sector, then we can reach back and bring in women and minorities who don't go to college and don't need to go to college, because those jobs as technicians and supervisors in a plant don't require that. They do require very precise training, and it can be 8 to 9, 10 months with an apprenticeship. So there's a bit of a lead time and an investment we have to make in people. But I think that's how we can really drive diversity in this space. Because my partner is Haitian, and I look at her mom and dad, and I look at how hard they work, and I look at the multiple jobs that they have. And I use that community because I'm familiar with it, right? I may be from Louisiana, but Katie is Haitian, and so I look at how hard they work, and for all that effort, you may make $25,000, $30,000 a year, which the last time I checked is the federal poverty line. A technician, starting job in biomanufacturing is $45,000 to $50,000. Those jobs easily scale up to $80,000 to $90,000 and can go upwards to $150,000 without a college degree. All you need is the appropriate training.
Well, Kenn Turner, good luck. We love that vision. We believe in that vision. We want to be a part of that vision. We too believe that every human was born to be a problem solver, and they should achieve at the level of their potential. And thank you to Mass Life Sciences for your support of the Museum of Science. All right, 3 questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tim.